What would you do if the person everyone mocked turned out to be the one holding the truth that could save an empire? When Nia Brooks was fired in front of New York's most powerful executives, it looked like the end of another forgotten career. But one quiet command from Mafia boss Luca Moretti stopped her from walking away and uncovered a conspiracy that reached far deeper than anyone imagined. As betrayal, hidden secrets, and old wounds collide, the woman everyone underestimated will become the only person capable of saving his family, his empire, and perhaps even his heart. Stay with me, because every small act of kindness in this story leads to a twist no one sees coming. The marble lobby of the Monarch Crown Hotel had never been quieter. Crystal chandeliers shimmered above hundreds of guests gathered for Manhattan's largest financial summit. Yet every conversation vanished the instant Vanessa Price ripped an employee badge from Nia Brooks's blazer and let it clatter across the polished floor. "You were a hiring mistake from the beginning," Vanessa announced, loud enough for every executive, investor, and reporter to hear. "Pack your things and disappear before you embarrass this company again." A ripple of restrained laughter drifted through the elegant ballroom. Nia felt every stare settle on her curvy frame. She had spent weeks arriving before sunrise, leaving long after sunset, fixing problems no one else noticed. None of it mattered now. Keeping her chin high, she knelt to retrieve the badge. Her hands trembled, but her voice never did. "I'm sorry you feel that way," Vanessa scoffed. "Still trying to sound professional? Take your box and go." Nia lifted the small cardboard box, holding her notebook, family photo, and a thick folder she had refused to leave behind. As she turned, someone brushed past her shoulder. The folder slipped free. Papers scattered across the marble like white birds taking flight. One document slid farther than the rest, stopping against a pair of polished black Italian shoes. Silence spread through the lobby. Nia looked up. Luca Moretti stood surrounded by men in tailored black suits, his calm gray eyes fixed not on her, but on the page resting at his feet. Few people knew the billionaire hotel owner also ruled one of New York's most powerful crime families. Fewer still dared interrupt his path. He bent, picked up the document, and studied a single crimson mark drawn in the corner. His expression didn't change. Vanessa hurried forward with a nervous smile. "Mr. Moretti, I'm terribly sorry." "It's just paperwork from a dismissed assistant." Luca didn't hand it back. Instead, his gaze lifted to Nia. Fear flickered behind her steady eyes, yet she never looked away. Then his quiet voice echoed through the enormous lobby. "No one lets her leave." Every guard froze. Every executive fell silent. Even Vanessa's confident smile disappeared. Only Nia remained standing beside her little cardboard box, wondering why the most feared man in the room had just stopped her world from falling apart. 3 weeks earlier, she had walked through the revolving doors of Price Strategic Group, carrying a second-hand laptop, a neatly packed lunch, and a quiet determination no one could see. The morning sun reflected off the glass towers of Midtown Manhattan, while taxis rushed below. But Nia's thoughts stayed with the small brick house in Brooklyn, where her adoptive mother, Gloria, was recovering from another exhausting round of heart treatments. College had once promised a different future. Nia had excelled in supply chain management until hospital bills forced her to leave school and work full-time. Since then, she had learned an unspoken rule. The hardest worker was rarely the loudest person in the room. Her desk sat in the far corner of the office, tucked beside a filing cabinet no one else wanted. Before she even logged into her computer, Vanessa dropped a stack of contracts onto her keyboard. "These need checking before tomorrow." Nia smiled politely. "I'll start right away." Around her, conversations continued as though she weren't there. Someone joked that assistants were easier to replace than coffee filters. Another whispered that Vanessa probably hired Nia because no one else wanted the position. She pretended not to hear. Later that afternoon, an elderly janitor accidentally knocked over a bucket of cleaning solution outside the conference room. A young supervisor immediately blamed him for delaying an executive meeting and threatened to deduct the cost from his paycheck. "It wasn't his fault," Nia said gently, after reviewing the security monitor beside the hallway. "The wheel on the cart is broken." The supervisor rolled his eyes but walked away without another word. The janitor smiled gratefully. Most people never stop long enough to notice. Nia simply shrugged. Everyone deserves someone who notices. That night, the office emptied one floor at a time until only fluorescent lights and the hum of air conditioning remained. Vanessa emailed another assignment marked urgent. As Nia compared shipping records beneath the glow of her desk lamp, one route number appeared again. It didn't exist. She stared at the screen, her heartbeat quickening. Someone had hidden a destination inside paperwork that was never supposed to be questioned. Nia rubbed her tired eyes and opened another shipping manifest. The office around her had fallen silent hours ago. Beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan shimmered beneath a blanket of lights while rain traced thin lines across the glass. The only sound inside was the steady hum of the air conditioner and the quiet tapping of her keyboard. The mysterious route appeared again. Then again. Every payment connected to it had been divided into smaller transfers before disappearing into the same company, Harbor Meridian. On paper, the transactions looked ordinary. Together, they formed a pattern too deliberate to ignore. Instead of rushing into Vanessa's office, Nia slowed down. Experience had taught her that accusations without proof only destroyed the person asking questions. She opened a fresh notebook and marked every suspicious document with a small red symbol in the upper corner before creating secure backup copies on an encrypted drive she carried for personal work. "If I'm wrong," she whispered, "no one ever needs to know." Across the city, high above the skyline, Luca Moretti stood alone inside his penthouse office overlooking the Hudson River. A half-finished cup of espresso had gone cold beside a wall of security monitors. Marcus Hale entered quietly, carrying a sealed envelope. Our source called again. Luca didn't turn around. "The leak is real?" Marcus nodded. "Someone inside the logistics network has been moving money for months. They know your shipping routes before the contracts are signed." Luca's expression remained unreadable, but his hand tightened around the coffee cup. "Find the ghost," he said softly, "before the ghost finds us." Back at Price Strategic Group, Nia organized the copied files into her worn leather folder. As she shut down her computer, a reflection moved across the dark monitor. Someone was standing behind her office door. The footsteps disappeared before she reached the hallway. Early the next morning, she arrived to find every drawer exactly as she had left it. Almost. One folder sat half an inch out of place. Hidden inside the security archive, a surveillance recording quietly began to load. Its timestamp read 12:43 a.m. Vanessa Price unlocked Nia's office after midnight and walked straight toward her desk. Nia watched the grainy security footage twice before quietly closing the file. Vanessa never opened a drawer or touched the computer. Instead, she stood over the leather folder Nia had carried since college, studying it for several long seconds before leaving exactly as she had come. It wasn't proof of a crime, but it felt like the beginning of one. She copied the recording onto the same encrypted drive as the shipping records and slipped both into her handbag. By noon, the Monarch Crown Hotel buzzed with anticipation. Luxury sedans lined the entrance while security teams in dark suits swept every hallway. Employees straightened their jackets, lowered their voices, and stepped aside as Luca Moretti entered the building. He walked without hurry, yet the entire corridor seemed to move around him. 6 years earlier, his younger brother had died after trusting the wrong advisor. Since that night, Luca had built his empire on evidence instead of promises. Loyalty was earned. Trust was almost impossible. Nia first saw him from across the loading dock while carrying revised contract folders to the conference level. A delivery cart suddenly tipped sideways, sending expensive electronic equipment toward the marble floor. A young courier froze in panic as the operations manager stormed over. "You ruined everything," the manager snapped. "You're paying for every damaged piece." Nia glanced toward the security camera mounted above the service entrance. "Please wait." She requested the footage, replayed the recording, and pointed to the screen. The crate was loaded with a broken locking strap. He never caused the accident. The manager fell silent. The frightened courier looked ready to cry. "Thank you." Nia smiled softly. "Everyone deserves the truth." Several feet away, Luca had witnessed the entire exchange without interrupting. She never raised her voice. She never tried to impress anyone. She simply defended someone who had no power. As he continued walking, he spoke quietly to Marcus Hale, the assistant. Marcus looked toward Nia. "Who is she?" By evening, Marcus returned with a thin file. Nia Brooks, fired once after reporting financial irregularities at another logistics company. Luca turned one page. The investigation vanished. Marcus nodded. So did most of the records. Luca closed the file. Find out who wanted her forgotten? Marcus gave a silent nod and left the office. Luca remained by the window overlooking the Hudson River, watching cargo ships drift through the darkness. Too many strange pieces had appeared in only a few days. A forgotten employee, missing records, money flowing through invisible routes. None of it felt accidental. The following morning, Nia stood outside Vanessa Price's office holding a carefully organized report. Every suspicious transfer, every impossible shipping code, and every payment linked to Harbor Meridian had been documented with dates, invoices, and supporting records. Vanessa barely looked up. "What is it?" "I think someone is using our contract with Moretti Holdings to move money through fake shipping routes." Vanessa finally accepted the folder, flipping through only the first page before tossing it onto her desk. "Do you know what your problem is, Nia?" Nia stayed calm. "You think noticing details makes you important. I'm only asking you to review the evidence." Vanessa laughed without warmth. "I'm asking you to stop pretending you understand business beyond scheduling meetings." She leaned forward, lowering her voice. "If you ever accuse this company of fraud again, I'll personally make sure you never work anywhere in New York." Nia quietly gathered the report. She had expected disbelief. She hadn't expected fear. That afternoon, she delivered revised contracts to Monarch Crown Hotel. As she crossed the executive lobby, an elevator doors opened abruptly. An elegant older woman stepped out, then suddenly grabbed the wall, struggling to breathe. Several guests froze. Nia hurried forward. "It's all right," she said gently. "Stay with me." She eased the woman into a nearby chair, loosened the scarf around her neck, and searched her handbag for emergency medication. The prescription bottle was there. Something felt wrong. The label had been placed unevenly, and the pills inside were a different color than the dosage instructions described. "Don't take these," Nia said firmly. She immediately called the private physician listed on the emergency card tucked inside the purse. Minutes later, doctors rushed in. The patient was Sophia Moretti. When Luca arrived, the hospital corridor smelled of antiseptic and fresh coffee. He expected frightened staff and confused witnesses. Instead, he found Nia sitting quietly outside the examination room, her lunch untouched beside her. "You stayed," he said. She looked up. She shouldn't wake up alone. The physician stepped into the hallway. "Mr. Moretti." His expression turned grave. Those pills weren't mislabeled by accident. The words settled over the quiet hospital hallway like winter air. Luca looked from the physician to the small prescription bottle still resting in Nia's hands. "Can you prove it?" he asked. The pharmacy confirmed the original medication was replaced after it left their custody, the doctor replied. "Someone wanted your aunt to believe she was taking the correct prescription." The doctor returned to Sophia's room, leaving silence behind. Nia slowly stood. I'm glad she's going to be all right. You noticed something trained professionals almost missed, Luca said. She offered a tired smile. My mother takes heart medication. The pills looked wrong. There was no pride in her voice, only relief. For a long moment, Luca studied her. Most people who crossed his path wanted influence, money, or protection. Nia had asked for none of them. She had stayed because an elderly woman shouldn't wake up alone. 2 days later, Nia arrived at Moretti Tower expecting to deliver revised paperwork. Instead, Marcus Hale escorted her to the executive penthouse overlooking the Manhattan skyline. Several senior directors were already waiting. Vanessa stood near the conference table, her expression tightening the moment she saw Nia. She doesn't belong here, Vanessa said. Luca ignored the interruption. Nia Brooks will assist our internal review. The room fell silent. One director objected. She's an assistant. No, Luca replied evenly. She's someone who pays attention. That evening, the city lights glittered beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, while financial reports covered the long oak table. Nia quietly reviewed shipment schedules, vendor contracts, and security logs. After nearly an hour, she looked up. Your employees aren't reporting mistakes because they're afraid. One executive frowned. They're following procedure. They're protecting themselves, Nia answered calmly. When people fear punishment more than failure, problems stay hidden until they become disasters. The room grew still. No one had spoken to Luca that honestly in years. Instead of arguing, he leaned back. What would you change? Several executives exchanged surprised glances. Nia hesitated only briefly. I'd let people solve problems before deciding who deserves blame. Luca nodded once. For the first time in a long time, he admitted quietly. That sounds like leadership. Near midnight, as the others left, Nia continued reviewing electronics approvals. One digital signature stopped her cold. It belonged to Ethan Cole, the only advisor Luca had trusted without question. Nia stared at the glowing signature on the monitor, then quietly closed the file before anyone else noticed. She had learned long ago that the wrong accusation at the wrong moment could destroy an innocent person faster than the guilty one. She slipped a handwritten note into her leather notebook instead of speaking out. Outside, New York sparkled beneath a cool autumn sky as preparations began for the Moretti Foundation's annual charity gala. Limousines lined the entrance of the Grand Astoria Ballroom, while cameras flashed beneath towering crystal chandeliers. The evening was meant to celebrate children's hospitals and scholarship programs, yet beneath the polished smiles, another game had already begun. Vanessa watched Nia step into the ballroom wearing a simple navy blue dress Gloria had carefully pressed that morning. It wasn't designer, it wasn't expensive, but Nia carried herself with quiet dignity that somehow irritated Vanessa even more. Look who's pretending she belongs, Vanessa said loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. A dismissed assistant dressed for high society. Several people laughed politely. Nia simply smiled. I'm here because I was invited to help. Help? Vanessa scoffed. Or impress Mr. Moretti? The words spread through the room like smoke. Before Nia could answer, a frightened scream echoed from the children's dining area. A little girl had collapsed after taking one bite of dessert. Parents rushed forward in panic. Nia reached her first. She noticed the child's swollen lips, gently moved the untouched plate away, and asked the kitchen staff for the ingredient list. Tree nuts, she whispered. She immediately instructed a waiter to bring the emergency allergy kit while keeping the girl calm until the medical team arrived. Minutes later, the physician confirmed the quick response had prevented a far more serious emergency. Guests applauded softly. Luca watched everything without saying a word. He didn't notice the applause. He noticed that Nia stayed beside the child until her parents smiled again. As the ballroom slowly relaxed, Nia bent to retrieve the girl's dropped napkin. Near the service entrance, one waiter hurried away far too quickly. Something slipped from his pocket. a disposable cell phone. Its screen lit up for a single second before going dark. On it was tomorrow's travel route for Luca Moretti's armored car. Nia slipped the disposable phone into her handbag just as the waiter disappeared through the kitchen doors. By the time security searched the service hallway, he was gone. She wanted to hand the phone directly to Luca, but another thought stopped her. If someone inside his own organization had leaked the route, trusting the wrong person could erase the only evidence she had. The next morning, gray clouds hung over Manhattan as Nia arrived at Monarch Crown carrying the phone and her leather folder. Before she reached the executive floor, 2 security officers stepped into her path. "Miss Brooks, we need you to come with us." Inside the conference room, Vanessa stood beside a large screen wearing the smile of someone who had already won. Ethan Cole remained near the windows, calm and unreadable. Vanessa folded her arms. "Please explain why confidential transportation files were transmitted from your company account at 1:18 this morning." Nia frowned. "I never sent anything." Vanessa pressed a key. The screen displayed Luca's travel route, followed by login records carrying Nia's employee credentials. Murmurs spread around the room. "I was at home," Nia answered. "Someone used my account." Vanessa shook her head dramatically. "You were the only employee with access." Marcus looked toward Nia, searching her face instead of the screen. "Do you have anything that explains this?" he asked quietly. Nia reached into her handbag for the disposable phone. It wasn't there. Her heartbeat stopped. Someone had taken it. Vanessa stepped forward before Nia could speak again. "I believe this is enough to terminate her immediately." Without waiting for permission, she removed Nia's company badge and placed a cardboard box on the conference table. The same box Nia now held in the hotel lobby weeks later. She gathered her notebook, the family photograph of Gloria, and the thick folder containing backup copies of her research. "I won't confess to something I didn't do," she said softly. Vanessa snatched the folder from her hands. Company property. As they struggled over it, several pages slipped free and scattered across the marble floor. One page slid farther than the rest, stopping against Luca Moretti's polished black shoes. His eyes settled on a familiar red mark in the corner. The exact symbol investigators had found years earlier inside the file documenting the ambush that killed his younger brother. He slowly lifted his gaze to Nia. "I need the whole truth," he said, "especially the part you haven't told me." The lobby remained frozen. Guests watched in uneasy silence as Luca led Nia into a private conference room overlooking the rain-soaked streets below. Marcus closed the door behind them, leaving the city lights to flicker across the glass. Nia placed both hands on the polished table. "I never betrayed you." "I didn't ask whether you did," Luca replied quietly. "I asked what you're still hiding." For several seconds, she couldn't speak. Then the words she had buried for years finally surfaced. 5 years ago, I worked for another logistics company. I found the same pattern of fake shipping routes, split payments, and shell corporations. I reported it. Her voice trembled only once. The next morning, I became the person everyone blamed. She described the investigation that had ended her career before it truly began. Evidence had disappeared. Friends stopped answering her calls. Employers refused to interview her. She could have signed a statement admitting guilt in exchange for a quiet settlement. I chose unemployment instead. Luca listened without interrupting. When she finished, he opened a drawer and placed a thin file on the table. "I already knew." Nia stared at him. "I had Marcus investigate you before inviting you onto my review team." A painful silence settled between them. "You knew," she whispered. "I needed certainty." "And you never told me?" "I trusted facts before people." She looked away, fighting tears she refused to let fall. "That's exactly what they did before they destroyed my life. They collected facts about me without ever asking who I really was." For the first time in years, Luca had no answer. I'm sorry, he said. The apology was quiet, awkward, and completely sincere. He slid an access card across the table. If you walk out that door, Marcus will make sure you're safe. If you stay, every record in my organization will be open to you. No more secrets, no more walls. Nia looked at the card, then at the rain beyond the window. Slowly, she shook her head. I can't do this anymore. She walked away before either man could stop her. Outside, a yellow taxi pulled to the curb. Just as she reached for the handle, her phone vibrated. An unknown number. Only 6 words appeared on the screen. They're going to kill Sophia tonight. Nia's breath caught. She read the message again, but the unknown number vanished before she could call back. The taxi driver asked if she was getting in. Instead, she stepped away from the curb and dialed Marcus. Don't argue, she said the moment he answered. Sophia is in danger. Within minutes, Marcus traced the phone's last signal to an abandoned warehouse near the Brooklyn waterfront. Rain swept across rows of silent shipping containers, while blue harbor lights shimmered on the wet pavement. Nia arrived first, pulling her hood tighter as she slipped through an unlocked service gate. Inside, the building echoed with distant voices. She recognized Ethan Cole almost immediately. Sophia sat in a wheelchair beneath harsh fluorescent lights, pale but alert. Ethan rested a thick folder on a folding table. Sign the transfer, he said smoothly. Your family will never know the difference. Sophia's hands trembled. I won't give you Luca's inheritance. Vanessa stood nearby holding a small electronic device. You don't have many choices. Nia quietly ducked behind stacked cargo crates. Years earlier, she had studied emergency evacuation plans while organizing shipping facilities. The warehouse map returned to her memory. The main electrical panel sat behind the loading dock. She sent Marcus a single message with her location and the words, "Come quietly." Then she slipped through the shadows and reached the breaker room. The lights died. Shouts filled the darkness. Emergency lamps flickered on in deep red. Nia hurried back, guiding Sophia toward a narrow maintenance corridor hidden behind steel shelving. This way, she whispered. Sophia looked at her in confusion, but trusted her immediately. Outside, black SUVs roared through the rain. Luca had arrived. His security team spread across the docks while Marcus moved toward the rear entrance, exactly as Nia had instructed. Then, Nia noticed something that froze her in place. The luxury sedan Luca had just stepped beside wasn't empty. A blinking device had been secured beneath the driver's door. Its countdown had already begun. 10, 9. Nia didn't have time to shout over the storm. She ran. Every step carried her straight toward the man who still didn't know he was standing beside the center of the trap. Luca! Nia shouted. The wind swallowed her voice. Without thinking, she threw herself against him, forcing him backward, just as Marcus noticed the blinking device beneath the armored sedan. Move! A deafening blast shook the dock. Heat rushed through the rain-soaked air as shattered glass scattered across the pavement. The vehicle lurched sideways, its alarm screaming before falling silent. Nia hit the ground hard. A sharp sting spread through her shoulder where flying glass had cut through her sleeve. Luca reached her first. Nia. I'm fine, she whispered, though she clearly wasn't. Marcus and the security team rushed toward the warehouse while emergency lights flashed across rows of containers. Ethan's men surrendered almost immediately. Vanessa tried to disappear through a loading exit, but found every escape already blocked. Still kneeling beside Luca, Nia forced herself to stay focused. The port, she said, fighting the pain. Don't let Ethan reach the port system. Marcus stopped. Nia pointed toward the hotel reservation platform displayed on her cracked phone. I copied everything weeks ago. Harbor Meridian used the hotel network to hide duplicate access codes. If Ethan logs in now, he'll erase every transaction. Marcus immediately relayed the instructions. Within minutes, every shipping terminal connected to Moretti Holdings was locked down. Unauthorized accounts disappeared one by one. Ethan, realizing the network had been sealed, abandoned the control room and ran into the storm. Marcus started after him. "Forget him," Luca ordered. Marcus looked stunned. "But protect my family." His eyes never left Nia. For 6 years, revenge had been the only thing keeping him awake at night. Now, for the first time, another life mattered more. As paramedics wrapped Nia's injured shoulder, Marcus returned, carrying a weatherproof case recovered from Ethan's office. Inside were original contracts, hidden bank records, and a handwritten memorandum. The truth unfolded with brutal clarity. Ethan had orchestrated the ambush that killed Luca's younger brother years earlier. Vanessa had hired Nia only because she was brilliant enough to repair damaged logistics systems, planning to blame her once everything was complete. Nia closed her eyes for a moment. "There," she whispered weakly. "There's one more contract." Luca leaned closer. "It can still legalize the theft if Ethan reaches it first." The ambulance doors closed. The race to save his empire had only just begun. 48 hours later, Nia walked into the executive boardroom at Moretti Tower with her injured shoulder still wrapped beneath a dark blazer. Sunlight poured through the glass walls overlooking Manhattan, but the room felt colder than the storm at the harbor. Ethan Cole sat under federal supervision. Vanessa Price occupied the opposite end of the table, her confidence finally replaced by silence. Luca remained standing. "We're here to finish what began years ago." Nia connected her laptop to the screen. Instead of accusations, she presented facts. Every suspicious payment, every altered shipping route, every witness statement from employees she had once defended when no one else cared enough to listen. The janitor, the courier, the hotel staff, even the pharmacist who confirmed Sophia's medication had been switched. Small acts of kindness had become the strongest chain of evidence. The final document appeared. It was the contract Ethan believed had disappeared forever. Nia had secretly copied it weeks earlier after recognizing the same red symbol hidden inside the shipping records. Combined with the recovered server logs and Marcus's investigation, it proved that Ethan had orchestrated years of fraud while Vanessa redirected suspicion toward anyone who threatened the scheme. Federal investigators stepped forward. Neither Ethan nor Vanessa argued. There was nothing left to deny. As they were escorted away, the boardroom remained completely silent. Luca looked toward every executive who had watched Nia be humiliated in the hotel lobby. "You all saw her as an assistant," he said. "I almost made the same mistake." He turned to Nia. "You didn't save my business." He paused. "You saved my family," and reminded me that trust is earned by character, not fear. He placed a single access card on the table. "Chief Operations Officer." Nia smiled through quiet tears. "Only if we build something better together." "Together," Luca answered. 1 year later, the corner office no longer belonged to the loudest voice, but to the wisest one. Nia created a leadership program for overlooked employees, making sure talent was never hidden behind appearance, title, or background again. In the warm kitchen of the Brooklyn home she had bought for Gloria, Luca set 2 mugs of coffee on the table before taking the seat beside her. "I don't need you behind me," he said softly. "I want you beside me." Outside, the city kept rushing forward. Inside, 2 wounded hearts had finally found a place that felt like home. If this story touched your heart, leave one comment below. When Luca placed the Chief Operations Officer card in front of Nia, it wasn't just a promotion. It was the moment the woman everyone had dismissed became the one person trusted to rebuild an entire empire. And that changed far more than a business. This story reminds us that real trust is never built by promises alone. It's built one honest choice, one brave decision, and one act of integrity at a time, even when no one is watching. Today, think about someone in your life who has quietly earned your trust the way Nia did. Don't wait until they've walked away to let them know their character matters more than their title. Have you ever met someone who completely changed your first impression? I'd love to hear your story in the comments. And if Nia's journey stayed with you, don't miss the next story, because sometimes the next unexpected meeting changes a life even more than the first.